You are now in the realm of enlightenment and transformation.
Welcome to Chief Speaks.
All music performed and produced by Yu.
Enlightenment and transformation. Enlightenment comes from allowing yourself to journey through the death, the primordial abyss of wisdom's waters. For it is the treasures and mysteries that lie wait in the dark that transform us and propel us to a new enlightened state. One should neither aspire to live in the light nor the dark, but should journey between the two in order to evolve the overall reality into a self-actualized creation. Knowledge is your light as wisdom is your darkness. The bold interplay of the two in your life leads you to an enlightened understanding of yourself and the universe you've created. Male is your enlightenment. Female is your transformation. Child is your evolution. Woman, accept the light into your darkness so it may enlighten you. Man, bring your light boldly into the darkness so that it may transform you. Enlightenment and transformation.
I love you so much because you just don't know what you've just done for me. Thank you so much.
Wow. Okay. This is like the best call I've had in ages on BTR.
So this show was meant for me to be able to hear today, and I'm so thankful.
That's his home.
Therefore, now a new pathway has now been cut in order to get to the Almighty, where there may not have been one. So the communication with them, if they have enough power and strength to talk to us, the communication will be very related.
That's one of the reasons I don't get into the encouragement thing too much, because it starts to become a perpetual alarm clock that we just keep hitting snooze on. I speak to the ascended masters, quote unquote. I talk about spiritual stuff, but I also speak about some very practical, we can do today things.
Be as natural as you can be with your spiritual. You can't always go by your feelings, because your feelings are corrupted. Your feelings are just as corrupted as everything else, your chakras and everything else. You got to know what's beyond you, and that's why we have elders. We can't do everything. You can't get everything out of books or a weekend certification. You can have the most powerful, ancient, oldest, most, as far as you know, truthful tradition in your hands. And if you still have a dirty spirit, you're not going to get anything out of it. You're not going to learn anything. You're not actually going to grow. I try to teach in a way where I make myself obsolete. That's always been my goal, to make myself obsolete.
I really wanted to, kind of big you up. I think you're awesome.
There's a lot of elders out here right now that want to know what's going on. They're not getting on Twitter and stuff like that, but they want to be up on the new stuff. Sit down and have some conversations with them. It's not always about hearing their story. It's also about being news reporters for them and letting them know, like, yeah, this is what's happening right now. They may tell you something about what happened in Charleston that you couldn't even. Your spirituality has to create sane spiritual family. Okay, and that family exists first inside of you. You have to express the different expressions of that rainbow coalition of spirits inside of you first. Okay, don't let communities hijack that rainbow. See, the problem is when we come into the conscious community, the dudes are doing the same thing that the women are doing.
I just want to say that I really enjoy your show every Sunday, and my friend and I call it going to church. When we call in, we'll be like, you going to church? And I'm like, where have y'all been at?
God cannot go against its own truth. So anytime you have an inkling that God is going against its own truth, then God is no longer behaving as God. So therefore, the spiritual community doesn't recognize God. You dig where I'm coming from? Or can we have a new thought? Can we step outside of the books for a second and have a new conversation about hair weaves and wigs? Can we have a new conversation about homosexuality? Can we have a new conversation about vegan eating? What are we doing? It's a good day for exorcism.
Unity.
This is an ancient conversation. Absorb this expression with your first eye vision, bringing forth the light of indigenous wisdom. Root knowledge to circumvent Western logic. We're the black womb that generates the esoteric. Modern day Imhotep constructing step pyramids to the mind's apex. Trained in the warrior arts of Kemet. Don't think about flexing with some thug activity. Annihilate your self-hate with Kupagani, Capoeira, and Djembe harmony. Sons of Sankofa here to bring courts clarity. Ushering the wisdom of antiquity. That medicinal remedy served through golden seal poetry. Guiding through word sound, claiming our destiny. Removing the corrosion around the heart chakra. Feel the presence of our ancestors. Sankofa spreads her wings, spanning the hemispheres of the universe. Just remembering our roots helps to navigate us through the Kali Yuga course. The nigga curse gotta celebrate ignorance. Nigga lives in the absence of consciousness. Self-knowledge heals the Urugu virus. Know thyself, African, reclaim your brilliance. Our creative genius is limitless. Sun's here to sanitize our community from mental pollution and moral debris. Establishing the pillars of a spirit-centered identity.
The beauty of this life is the choices. So you have a choice. You're going to manifest the spirit of someone who's been systematically oppressed and enslaved their entire life. Or you can manifest the spirit of a warrior, of a spiritual warrior who brings balance in the midst of disorder. Be that which your people need most.
From male to boy, the man to divine. Walking in time with their ancestors' mind. Living the legacy of traditional rhythms. Vessel used to express indigenous wisdoms. Djembe drum the language of harmony. Reconnecting the severed pieces of a lost identity. Old Willie, a conqueror of the African psyche. Now operating as an I instead of we. Calling or set to assemble the scattered memory. Words sound uttered clearly through the voice of Tahuti. The Jali's here to preserve our story. Straight from the fertile ground of the river Hapi, we come bearing aunts in this time of destruction. Ancient man in the present, direct from the Dogon civilization. Our origins straight out of Sirius B. Yo, I'm Sirius B, you're a star. Blinging like the Big Dipper, iced out like the 21st century lost nigga. From nigga to knowledge to action. Sons of Sankofa, identity surgeons. Casting out the poisonous toxins of self-ignorance. Recharging the pineal gland, igniting the African conscience. Preparing Antigra soup with Necharu crackers. Recipe for the colonial-minded self-haters. Administering the meiotic enema, purging the dire nigga trauma. Nourishing the lost child from Africa to his nature. Come ride the sturdy wings of Sankofa as we prepare for the sun's takeover.
Djembe means unity. And as African people, which we are, Africans, we must understand that first, there must be a process of unifying self and understanding self. The oppressor has had influence over us, but not power. Power is something that we've lent and they've borrowed, but it is ours because we are the original holders of source energy, the original benefactors of source energy and divine light. So in understanding that nation building begins with self and the unifying and the organizing of self, there must be a reorganizing of the community or the community. So we deal with the Sankofa energy and acknowledging that there has been a black print that's been laid for us to move forward into a more glorious, refined now.
Peace. Welcome everyone to Chief Speaks. Good dawning to you all, especially those of you in the chat. I see you all. I see you, and welcome. And I will that your day is going strong and well. Of course, we're starting a little late today. I actually got engrossed in a bill session with someone this morning, and the time slipped away from me a little bit. So definitely, please forgive me. For the slight delay there, but it'd be worth the wait because we're talking about some good things today, right? We've been talking about the solstice for some time now. The meaning of the solstice and really what we've been dealing with up until this point are some of the ingredients of the solstice, of course. Not just so much the event itself, or the phenomenon itself, but we've been taking some time to really look at the all of the ideas and all of the components that go into that stilling of the sun, as a solstice in itself implies. So, we've been speaking about just the makeup of the sun, of course, the immaterial and material makeup, or the unseen and seen phenomenon of the sun itself. And as promised, I said we would get into some more of the mythology, of course, but we've covered a lot of things, even in terms of the idea of Orun, or what this idea of the sun would represent, and different systems and things like that. And as we said in last Sunday, the sun itself is, or the solstice itself, is a time for recharging. I know often it seems like it's such a time for doing, because during those summer months or those summer seasons, our energy is high. Our energy is high. Our expectations are high, and the things that we choose to do are seen in broad daylight, because again, there's so much sun. So it seems like a high time for manifestation, and certainly that is there. That opportunity is there, and to be seen and to manifest and to bring things forth, because of course during the solstice we celebrate it in some senses, or some celebrate it because the sun is said to be at its zenith, or at its peak, or at its highest point. So again, it represents the resurrection and the ascension of the sun, and whether that's SUN or SON, but representing that resurrection. But when we're resurrecting, a lot of times we look at it like we're resurrecting, especially depending on our spiritual or our religious investments, like we're resurrecting back to the Father. So what do you really receive from your Father, if you think about it? Just in plain language. Do you usually receive nourishment from your Father? No. Do you necessarily even receive a recharge of energy from your Father? Not typically. You may receive a recharge or redirection of your actual purpose, of your actual aim, because you get those marching orders again through the authority of your Father to tell you, hey, this is what you're here to do, or let me remind you, what you're here to do, but not necessarily a renewing, not necessarily an opportunity for certain things to die. And one of the things that I didn't really hit upon in our previous segments, which I will, of course, in this segment, is the aspect of resurrection, or the aspect of the solstice that really speaks to the dying. Of course, when we look at it as a resurrecting object, or the symbolization of the sun, in terms of that symbolism of going through a divine path and then resurrecting, it's awesome. It's a beautiful and glorious thing to, of course, consider. But one of the important points to consider in our learning is, as you're resurrecting, resurrecting, meaning to stand, to stand up again, So as you're resurrecting and you're standing up again, and you're being reborn, you're also being re-euthanized. We could look at it that way. So as something is being born, at the same time something is dying. So oftentimes when we look at our resurrection ideas, we don't look at the idea that in order for us to renew or to resurrect, that something has to die. So of course, when we're looking at the solstice, right, we're looking at our the resurrection or the re-rising of our personal sons, or our pineals, or like we spoke about in previous shows, we spoke about the Merkaba, and how the Merkaba is really that, in some ways, that divine spaceship, if you want to use that, or that interdimensional vehicle, that interdimensional spaceship. So it's still this idea, of course, of movement. It's this idea of travel that we've taken on and enjoyed so much. The possibility to forsake where we currently are today, and go into a land, into a place where we can be ambassadors of the consciousness that we hold right now, and we can leave some of even our earth-based consciousness and our earth-based personality, so that we can radiate, somewhere else. We can radiate through another dimension. So the idea of that, of course, is very appealing. The thought of being able to move in that way, and to move like that, and to change our sacred and spiritual perspectives through that level of travel, and resurrecting our perspective, and resurrecting our viewpoint, and resurrecting even our traditions to some degree, right? But of course, through the resurrection, there has to be a killing. There has to be a dying. That's what happens. So you look through different traditions, and like I said, I'm not going to get into it too much in this show. I'm timing it out, to some degree. But you look at different traditions, and like I mentioned some of the supposed messianic figures that you have in different traditions. Not only Quetzalcoatl, but of course also Mithra, Atta, Yeshua ben Pantera, Osir, Haru. Or Haru would really be the messianic resurrection, or rebirthing of Osir. But of course, in so many different traditions, you have this idea where their births and their or even their deaths or their resurrections are centered and pivoting on certain natural events, like your solstices, and like your equinox, and so forth and so on. Which of course lends idea that perhaps maybe some of the myths that we're reading about are really, or should and can really, be attributed to astronomical and earthly events. There's that possibility, of course, right? When we take it a little bit out of our mythology. And this is why some time ago I had spoke to you all, and I said, when you are teaching your children spirituality, I advise that sometimes it's best to not teach them the religious aspects or even the mythology of your spirituality until they're adults. Now, of course, much of what you're reading and you may see in terms of mythology, the idea of it was originally meant for children, but like I say, when you're studying, you always want to study the dispensation of the people that you're speaking to. You always want to study who's being spoken to and why they're being spoken to, and what's the time period that they're being spoken to in. That's an important thing. So that essentially means that depending and judging the dispensation of a group of people will determine what kind of information that you feed them. And thank you, sister. Not only what kind of information will you feed them, but also how you will feed it to them and when you will feed it to them. So those are all the things that we may look at and say, okay, well, this is what we need, how we need to share this information. So in this day and time, and in this dispensation of those of us who are raising children within the Anglosphere or within Western culture, or parallel and adjacent to Western culture, I would strongly advise you not to teach your children mythology until they're adults. But let's say, for instance, if you were a Christian and you wanted to teach them about Jesus and the virgin birth and so forth and so on, you could certainly do that same teaching through the sharing of astronomical events. Teach them about the solstice, teach them about the equinox, teach them about the path of the sun, teach them about the different constellations. Get a telescope and let them look at the constellations, and of course certain planets they can see at certain times of the day. And you don't always need a telescope for that, even. In fact, I'll tell you a little trick. A lot of times, if you're getting a lower scale kind of telescope, if you don't really maybe have the resources to put out for a telescope that you might really like, one of the things you can do is get a really good pair of binoculars. A really good pair of binoculars will actually do much more for you in terms of looking at the stars and looking at planets than a low end telescope will. All right, so that's just little our new fun fact. But so the idea here again of all these different mythologies, you'll find that there are these births around December 25th, right? Or again, these births around the 21st, 25th, but around the winter solstice, right? And the idea there is that in order for the body to be born, there is an aspect of the spirit that has to die. So of course we celebrate births, just like when children come into the world and we say, "Oh wow, there's a new baby. This is so beautiful," and we celebrate it as we should. It's the giving and the sharing of life is a beautiful thing. It should be celebrated. But sometimes we don't realize that there is a spiritual component, or there is a spiritual life or an unseen existence where that individual had to die in order to be born into this reality. You see, so when you're looking at your children, you're actually looking at something that just resurrected, but it resurrected into the body form. And through the development of its consciousness, as it begins to grow and as it begins to take on information that aligns it with the sky and aligns it with the earth and aligns it with the sun and all of the different elements that work in its favor for development, and it becomes the embodiment of some of these different qualities, then it through its own personal solstice has the opportunity to resurrect back into the spirit again. Because remember the idea, and we shared this even when we looked at the word Merkaba. And again, I would advise those of you who did not have an opportunity to listen to that show, check it out. Check out the segment that we did on Merkaba recently, because like I said, all the segments that are done basically through the Monday and Friday shows are basically supports for the monthly topic. So sometimes we may speak about these things and it's still confusing. I'm still lost. I'm still trying to figure out where we're going with this or what you're saying with this. One of the things that you can utilize is the shows in between to just kind of fill out and round out your literal and figurative understandings of what is actually being shared. So when we looked at the Merkaba, of course, we realized that it was a distinction of three different words: Mer, Ka, and Bah. And looking at that symbolization of Ka, or spirit, we see that outstretching, towards the heavens, towards the sky. Functioning as different things, because see, like even when I shared that, I saw some people that put in the chat, Ka means this. If you're localizing the definitions in that way, you're losing the meaning of the symbol. You see, the symbols are utilized so that they can grow and evolve with you. So some might look at the outstretching and they may say, "Oh, well, that's praise. I'm praising something. I'm worshiping." Others may look and see an antenna. Others may look at the arms that are outstretched. They form a perfect cup, ready to be filled by something. Some may look at that and say, well, the arms outstretching, they're reaching towards the heavens for new information, which could be an antenna or just to grab information. It could be a sign of divination, So when we say that calming spirit, or the outstretched hands mean, or that spirit, we localize the definitions and we really make them static when in truth they're alive and dynamic. So it could mean different things, you see. And as we grow and we evolve, when we go through our personal solstices, the experiences that we've had in life take on new meaning. So that means even our own symbolism in life takes on new meaning. Now, the sun's path or the sun's movement represents, our opportunity to go through so many different things and so many different experiences to gather on to ourselves, to take on a passage of different meanings, a passage of different forms of worship and understanding and connections and relationships with so many different other distinguished elements and evolutionary forces that exist within our environment and beyond our environment. You see? So when we look at the sun and we look at, of course, the solstice, we're looking at our opportunity to take all of the information of our journey and bring it back to the depths of our origins. You see? So essentially, the solstice is a process of resourcing. What is resourcing? To go back to the source, you see, or to go back to the light. Ray, light, source. So origin. So we're going back to the source of light, or we're returning to the source. You see, so it's our opportunity to not only recharge. That's why a lot of people they celebrate during the summer months, they vacation during the summer months. Some things we do are very natural during the summer months. We take the seeds that we've been holding and that have come from the harvest, of the fall. We take those seeds now that have come out of those fruits and those and those vegetables, and we put them back into the source of their beginning. We put them back into the soil during the summer, so we replant during the summertime. You see, so we're taking the things that we've acquired, the things that we've learned, and that we breathe into the atmosphere that have returned unto us, and we're replanting them so they can be something else. So I wanted to look for a moment, again, like I said, not only the idea of our beginnings, or some of the solstice or the celestial beginnings at around December 25th, representing the birthing of the body, but that means, of course, the dying or the killing of the spirit. You see, then of course, then what would the summer solstice represent? If the winter solstice is in that space, then the summer solstice would, of course, be the rebirthing of the spirit and the killing of the body. You see, the dying off of the body. That's because if you think about, if I'm resurrecting to the heavens, what does that mean? I'm abandoning my body. I'm forsaking my physical form in order to go into my spiritual form. You see, so you start to see the interplay there, that there's always going to be the laws of balance and correspondence completely active and in effect. If you have a newt, you're going to have a geb. Or if you're going to have a sky, you're going to have a earth. In that sense, if you're going to have an Amun, you're going to have an Amun Ra. So it's that idea there that we begin to work with, that helps us to understand that even through our moments of celebration, even in our moments of celebration, such as the solstice, of course, we still have these opportunities in these moments where there is also a mourning, in a sense, that takes place. You see, so even though if there's a birthing, there's a moment, there's a mourning, because of our laws of balance and correspondence. We see this even if we look at comedic structure, if we look at the original the Agdod, or those original 8 pair of primordial entities that came forth, like Nu and Nut and Hehu and Hehut, Keku and Kekuit, Kerket, Karhet, excuse me. You see, okay, there's a balance between that male and female that's always present. So there's a balance between life and death that's always present. So even during the time of a summer solstice, where we're celebrating, oh, the sun is beautiful, my pineal is at its highest zenith and at its apex, and I'm stronger this time of year than I ever am. I'm stronger because my spirit is stronger. You see, not necessarily my body, but because my spirit is stronger, than it would be at any time. So that time of where we look at Ka, we look at the symbolization or symbology of Ka, and we say, okay, those arms are outstretched. Well, this is the time when they're really, they're not too short to box with God. They're really reaching into that sun sphere, because I'm at my spiritually strongest at this time, But if we look at the force of Ra, Ra is, of course, gives us great energy and symbology through the presence of the sun. Ra is seen as force. You see, Ra manifests the sun, but Ra is seen as basically the force and the movement of the universe. You see, so I know a lot of times when we look at Ra, we say, well, Ra is light. Of course, when I used to teach the youth, and especially in the school that I had, you simplify things. So I would say, what's Ra? Divine light. Okay, keep it moving. What's Ma'at? Balance. Because when you do things like that, you can give them body movements. I would say, what's Ma'at? And they would pretend like they're walking on a tightrope so they could remember it. Balance. What's Ra? They would open their eyes up real wide to see light, divine light, But as we grow, as we mature and we go through our paths and we go through the cycles of our own personal sun, well, we take on deeper meanings. We learn some other aspects about these particular forces. So we learn that, things like or forces like Ra extend beyond just the idea of light. Or like, well, some people will say, well, the ancient Egyptians, they were sun worshipers. They worshiped the sun god Ra. Nobody worshiped the sun god. We didn't have a sun god, In fact, we didn't even really have gods, or a god. So the idea that Ra allows itself to be symbolized through the sun sphere is something a little bit different. It's like having a child almost. And, if you look upon the son, you would have seen the father. Well, if you look upon the child, you would have seen the parents. You see, but the child is not the parents. The child brings forth. The parents bring forth that child. They manifest that child. You see, so that's why if you look at our term or our force of Ra, or Re, Ra, Re, Ru, these are all similar names. Similar depictions of that Ra energy. But if you look at it, you'll see it manifest in so many different forms. And our energy is why it's important to pay attention to it. It's important that you start to see that Ra, being that symbol, that idea of light, and that balancing point moves itself through so many different children. That's why you have a term like Kepra, because you have Keper, right? The archetype of Keper, and then you have Kepera. So that already lets you know that Keper is one form, which of course is the scarab or the dung beetle, representing that transformative aspects. But then you have Kepera. You see, so when you put the variants together like that, you begin to see how many different places that Ra shows up, or that force is necessary to show up. We have Amin, or Amun, right? And then of course we have Amin Ra. We have Atum, and then of course, or Tim. Sometimes we'll say Tim, Tem. Sometimes we may say Atum, Atum, or today we say Adam, Atom. Or Adam, Adam, But we have this force of Atum, but we also have Atum Re or Atum Ra, you see. And just like you have Amin Ra is the hidden master, or the hidden body of that particular force or that particular energy. In that sense, Ra even manifests itself through, because you have Heru, right? So Heru, who, like Hehu, Hehut, in your Ogdod pair, but you have Heru, right? Heru Kuti, coming forth as that falcon that we see. So we start to begin to see that the Ra of force or movement manifests itself in so many different beings. And as it manifests through so many different beings and experiences, it gets an opportunity to take on those experiences and be them for the moment, and then return the information and the intelligence of those experiences back to its actual source during that time of the solstice, because the intelligences and the wisdom is gathered up through the spirit. You see, it's gathered up through the spirit. So when we raise our hand in praise and jubilation and that antiphon, and we raise our hands up to the heavens, in that sense, we are returning. So it's not just that we're receiving spirit, we're sending spirit. We're sending intelligence and spiritual information back up to that Akashic realm, back up to the hidden realm, or back to Amun, or back to Oduduwa, you see, or as somebody said, just back to the universe. We have that opportunity to do that. So not only do we see Ra or Re as the energy of or fire, or the fire or the force of what we see as solar rays, but we also see Ra as the force of the falcon. When the falcon cries out and it makes it sound, we see Ra manifest through there. When we look at the force and the willful power and the insistence of the dung beetle, or the scarab or kepper, we say, well, the force where it takes its dung and it rolls it and it rolls it and it rolls it, and then its children springs forth from its dung, we see that, well, that's the force of Ra or Re working through Kepper. So we give it the title or the understanding of Kepera. You see, Kepera. So you see that active force or that will to move forward, is inherent in that energy of Ra, the will to move forward. That's one of the things that we celebrate. You see, we celebrate that during that time. That's why when you look at the in comedic depiction, oftentimes you'll see Ra with the head of that hawk, right? And you'll see, of course, the solar disk on top of him, the solar disk above the head of the hawk. And of course, what encircles that disk, if you look closely, you see that disk is encircled by a serpent, you see. And of course, he holds his ankh. He holds his ankh typically in his left hand, and in his right hand he holds his scepter, which is his power. You see, so he has life and power in his hands in that sense. And of course, the sun being encircled by that serpent, the sun is encircled by that regenerative aspect of the serpent, always spinning, always moving, but shedding its skin in that sense and allowing itself the process and the opportunity for regeneration. So when you're going into the idea of the solstice, what you're doing is, you're going into the idea and the principles of intelligence. You're looking at all of the foolish things that you have done all year up into the solstice. You're looking at all of the foolish things that you've done, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to let those things die. I have to let them die. You see, I'm going to raise up to my hands towards the heaven to have a bi-directional experience. You see, and what's the bi-directional experience? I'm going to receive light or receive sun, and I'm also going to send sun. You see, I'm going to send information, I'm going to receive information. So, I learned that science of divine communication, you see, where I learned how to talk and listen, which I know for a lot of us sometimes is a huge challenge. We love to speak, but we don't like to listen very much, but those energies at rest represent that dormant time when we're listening. When the Ra appears, it's an opportunity to move, to express force. So you may have, like I said, Kepri or a Kepper, but then you'll have Kepri or Kepra, letting us know that, okay, now the sun is moving. You see, because that, Kepper moves that sun, so now the sun is on its way. It's making its movement, and there are so many children that come. There's so many experiences that come as a result of Ra's movement. For instance, Het Haru comes as a result of Ra's movement. Baset, Sekhmet come as a result of Ra's movement. So we start to see all the different things and the products that we create in our lives through our movement. So movement is a key thing. But the opportunity to leave behind this solstice our isms, our fears, our jealousies, our insecurities, our insanities, our lunacies. An opportunity to leave them behind and take on a new way of doing things. To open our hands up. You see, when you look at the symbol of Ka, a spirit, it's open hands, ready to receive. You see, ready to be refilled with new information. So we give ourselves that opportunity to be, re-engorged with a new way of doing, or maybe a new tradition, or a new perspective, a new way to look at things, you see. So that symbolic meaning there of Ra, which is not only of, okay, I'm breaking up. Cool. Thank you all for letting me know. I will fix it. All right. Just give me a second. I just want to fix breaking up. Yeah, so it should be cool now. But so that idea again, of all the things that we're creating through our journey, which become our tools, of course, which become our value, of what we're able to do, and all of the different ways that we can apply our force. Like, for instance, when we become Kepra, we become the creator. You see, thank you everyone for letting me know it's clear. So the movement through Kepra to Kepra, represents the movements of creation. You see, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just saying thank you for everyone. Those of you can't see the chat, they were telling me that my sound was breaking up. So thank you for letting me know. So the key issue that you're looking at here, again, during the solstice, is not only a resourcing of your energy, but it's taking the time to have key conversations. Now we're bringing it down to an earth level, of course, right? Taking that opportunity to have key conversations with individuals who could change your life. Individuals that maybe you've kept a closed fist around, you didn't want to listen to, you didn't want to hear. You always stayed on the fringe of, ignoring, almost, in a sense. But you're giving yourself an opportunity to have some key conversations and really an accurate representation, and you should have learned that we spoke about the serpentine fire. Again, if you need to go back to that segment, go on back to it and you'll understand what we're saying. But allowing yourself the moment of that accurate representation of who and what you are beyond your physical egoic representation or your historic representation, what your legend is, but going beyond your historical narrative and even your own personal legend, but giving yourself an opportunity to fully represent yourself as who and what you are this solstice, whatever that may mean, and of course, most of the times, whatever that means, it means something scary when you first think about it. It means something that maybe you're afraid to do or would seem inappropriate to do, because that's, it always seems like there's something inappropriate lying beneath lying beneath the surface, right? It's funny, I just saw in the chat, Brother Haru Wajet said 9, it's fine. 9 is a sacred, but may I get into that? When I speak about Quetzalcoatl, you'll hear me speak about the number 9 and how on the Mayan calendar, how that 9 is so significant to Quetzalcoatl and the rebirthing in that sense. So it's very interesting that you said 9, it's fine. Everything's for a reason, of course. But yeah, so that idea, again, bringing it down to some real basic language that, everyone can understand, that solstice is that time to kill the body. Real simple. Kill the body. And I know during those sun times, we really embrace and enjoy the body. We try to get a sun body even, I want to get my body right for the summer. And, that's orgy season. No, I'm playing, but but you're trying to get your body right for the summer and things like that without understanding that's the time to really disassociate from your body reality. Now, you see some people do it naturally in the summertime, right? You see people are wearing less clothes. They darn near want to be naked half the time. They're not as concerned about their covering a lot of times, even if they don't look the way they would like to look. You see guys walking around with no shirt on, things like that, and maybe, they may not look exactly how they would like to look without their shirt off. But during that time, you become less in tune with what your body presentation is and more in tune with your feelings and your emotions. You become more sensitive to the environment, more sensitive to nature during that time, because essentially what you're doing in those moments, you're coming closer to your spiritual self and drawing further away and distancing yourself from your physical self. You see? So it's that opportunity to be who and what you're supposed to be, or who and what you will to be, and who and what you see yourself to be in that moment, without the fear or the guilt of what it means on the impact of your ego. It's because during that time, December 21st or December 25th, during those ranges, you have so many different messianic figures that were born, during that time. But what we have in that time, we have an opportunity for ego to be born. Separation is born because the spiritual oneness that was had prior to that is killed off, so that distinction can be achieved. This is this baby, that's that baby. That baby's a male, that baby's a female. So we separate at that time. So ego is born into the world, has its place. When we go through the solstice, we get an opportunity for ego to be to be killed or to die, and for spirit to take its place. You see, even if just for a while, because what happens after we have a real divine experience through our spiritual celebrations? Well, over the course of time, ego begins to creep back up from the feet down up, and it begins to encrust and cover the body again. You see. Eventually. So now we're walking around like Colossus. We're covered in this hard external film of ego. But the beautiful thing is, because we're dealing with a spiritual or spiral cycle, when we come back around to the time of the solstice, we receive another opportunity to kill something and be reborn into something. So that hardened encasement, the corrosive hardened encasement that we have around our heart, that we have around our mind, that we have around the light force of our Merkaba, we have an opportunity to use that serpentine fire that's inside of us, or that Ra force. We have that sleeping fire, then we have that waking fire, or that sleeping serpent, and then we have the waking serpent. And of course, that even if we look at Quetzalcoatl, known as the feathered serpent. So when you see that feathered serpent idea, we have this idea in our Aztec, or in our Mayan tradition, of the possibility of movement, something coming forth and moving, or when you read about the stories of Quetzalcoatl, eating people, what it's talking about is that divine serpent eating the ego, eating the human consciousness, and becoming a force where it can, aptly, coming to a space of full recognition of what it is. If you remember in that Kundalini or that serpentine fire segment that we did, one of the things that I specified was it's the science of being who and what you are, being the fullness of what you are, you see? So during the solstice, we break out through that serpentine fire. We break out through that fire. We embrace the force of Ra within us, so that the force of Ra within us connects to the force of Ra outside of us, you see? And we kill the body. Kill the body, keep the mind. We kill the body. So now what does it mean to kill the body? We kill the ego. It's an opportunity to be free, for freeness, to liberate ourselves from the encasement of our own identity. It's our opportunity to do that during the solstice. Now, I know, of course, you're going to look at many solstice celebrations, and you're going to celebrate the zenith and the peaking of the sun, and You might drum and you might dance and you might drink some wine and smoke a little herb. You might do all of those things, and sure, those are great. But use it as a time to see the sciences and the connection of your infinite power, and how your infinite power goes through all of these different cycles. It goes through these cycles of millennia. It goes through these cycles of centuries. It goes through these cycles of day and night, of years, of months, of moments, of seconds. You see, just like the sun does, and how you're constantly offering life to different consciousness. You see, so that centering consciousness, it goes through Kepra, or goes through Keper. It goes through Atum, or Atum. It goes through Amin, or Amun. It goes through Hu, or Heb. It becomes Heru, or Herukuti. It goes through so many forces and creates so many forces as it goes through its process of becoming. You see, it goes through its process of becoming. You see, it learns to represent the fullness of the truth. In Kemet, you have a text that says, "Arise, Ra, arise thou in thy shrine, so that thou mayest engulf the winds, inhale the north wind, swallow the spine, spit out the day, kiss the truth." You see, swallow the spine and spit out the day, kiss the truth. So erasing and getting rid of all of your cycles, all of the journey, and starting over, resetting. Kiss the truth. It's like reaching up and kissing the sun, or reaching up and kissing Amun. You see, so we have that opportunity to do that. We have that opportunity to enjoy that. All right, that's been our segment. As you notice, segments, I've been making them shorter now. All right. So what is your takeaway? But I warned you. Right? I warned you a couple months ago. Cutting back from 2-3 hour segments. You don't need them. You don't need them. But the takeaway here is not only very similar to Serpentine Fire in terms of being yourself, but it's the idea of embracing and recognizing the death that comes along with the life, or the rebirthing. Embracing the death that comes with the rebirthing. That's the key. Don't just celebrate the resurrection of a deity. Mourn the death of that deity. Because in order for it to be born, it died somewhere else. Just like when we die in this life, we're born into another life. You see? So the death of a state of being, always is the precursor to the rebirthing, or the manifestation of a new state of being. In order for you to have gas, the water has to die. In order for you to have, water, the ice has to die. In a simple way, simple sense. All right? I'll see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. for more enlightenment and transformation. Get things right. All right, until such time. Peace.